knees are touching.
I know that's kind of awkward.
Hey y'all, Mike Rokel here with Organizational Behavior. This is lecture 2 based on job performance. So we're going into now outcomes, and with outcomes, we're going to break that down into organizational commitment and job performance. And this particular lecture and conversation with James Avey will be focused on job performance. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an overview and maybe some contextual things in the conversation. And in these kind of lecture points, I'll make sure to fill in some of the details that we miss that are specific in the book. So strap in, let's rock and roll. So chapter 2 is all about job performance. James, you were to give a high-level overview of what we mean by job performance and organizational behavior. What would be your high-level overview?
Yeah. Well, we mentioned a little bit earlier this idea of job performance is... the word performance here is predicated by the word job. So it's in a context, it has a purpose, it has defined roles. So right off the bat, before you even have a human into that job, we can talk about this at some point again to like actually structuring and creating jobs, is when that job is created, it has something it must accomplish in order for the firm to have its strategy. Otherwise, the job doesn't need to be there.
Exactly.
So once that's nailed down, then you'll have these are the 4 or 5 kind of key deliverables, right? For like an HR mind, we might talk about essential job functions. These are the main things that they do. Then gets to the complexity of measurement. Sales, generally pretty easy to measure, right?
Volume,
Stuff like right, absolutely. Customer service, you got some metrics, some customer retention, and then you get to stuff like art. It's like, holy smokes, did people like it? Did they need to like? So there are challenges in measurement, but I do encourage people to think broader about the nature of performance. There's task performance, which is, did we do good at making a video?
Got it.
And we can outline this is what constitutes good video, bad video,
Probably
etc.
not.
Yeah, off the charts, 6 out of 5 on that one. So that's task performance, all the stuff required in the job. You get to like required qualification, skills, certification, stuff like that.
James did a great job at pulling us back and trying to get a broader view of job performance than maybe we have preconceived notions of. Breaks it into a couple of categories. He starts with task performance here, and we're going to go into some other types of performance as well here shortly. But job performance overall, I would know this definition if I was in your shoes. It's basically just what you have to do to be a good performer. When we're looking at good performance, we're looking at outcomes, right? That's the title of this part of the section of our organizational behavior class is outcomes. Outcomes are the results of behaviors. Behaviors are what you do. So what you have to do to be a good performer will dictate what is good job performance. Sounds simple. It is a very, very simple concept, but it starts to get more nuanced as we break it down. Well, how do you find out what is good or what needs to be accomplished? And that's where we go into the concepts that he was introducing of job analysis and job design and job redesign. And this is one of my favorite topics, the idea of designing work or designing jobs or redesigning work and redesigning jobs, because it's our chance to learn the business. And one of the sayings that you will hear over and over and over from me is that you cannot serve a business until you learn a business. For those of you who are going to go into administrative roles, those roles that are working in offices, that's great. That's awesome. But if you work for a production company or an operations company, you better get off your rear end, out of your seat, or however you get out there, and you need to go into those operations to try to figure out how they work. And the best way for us to do that, if we're ever going to be managers and supervisors or some sort of office personnel, is to actually go out and help with job analysis or job design. And we start all the way back with looking at how work is supposed to flow through our organization. We do what's called workflow analysis. It's the analysis of the way that work flows through our company. Go figure. So if we're a production company, we are taking raw materials and creating finished goods. We might go out and observe what it takes to accumulate those raw materials and how they interact with the equipment to create some sort of a finished good. And so we look at how that work should flow from raw material to finished good with all the equipment and all of our assets and how they tie together. And then we look at the people component. What sort of work needs to be done by a person to help move that stuff along, to interact with all of our equipment, to interact with our raw materials, all that stuff to create our finished goods. So it's people working or doing some sort of activity that is aimed at an end goal to create some sort of an outcome like a finished good, working with all of our other assets to do that. We're looking at that workflow to try to figure out then how do we design jobs? What sort of work should we all kind of accumulate together into a particular job? And that's what James is talking about, that we got to start with a well-defined or at least a well-parametered job that we really understand well. And that's done through workflow analysis and then job analysis. And in our job analysis, I want to make sure to emphasize 2 points. Again, you can't serve a business till you learn a business, and you're probably not going to learn it on your own. You're probably going to learn it by talking with people. So if we want to get really accurate jobs, if we want to know that we understand what is actually required to perform or to do really well in a job, we need to gather information from in multiple ways from multiple sources. So the multiple ways might be, you might have some questionnaires that you send out to people. You might go out and just watch the job being done. Observation. It's a great tactic. You might have employees fill out what we call job diaries, where they're filling out things, because if I just observe or if I just do a questionnaire, we might miss some of the details that somebody might do, during certain periods of certain production types. So if I go out and observe that they're producing one material, I might miss the fact that 2 weeks from now, they're going to do a run of different types of materials that will require them to do other things. And a job diary will help to capture those things. And maybe I'll do some interviews with people as well. So I'll have multiple tactics. And then I may want to have, or certainly will want to have, multiple sources. I'm going to want to talk to or send this information out to the employee. I'm going to want to talk to their supervisor, probably a manager, and other stakeholders, people who are up and down the production chain. I may even want to talk to customers to ask, what are the things that you're looking for in your finished goods? The best way for us to understand the value proposition of how we're designing jobs and how we're hiring people and training people and developing people and trying to get the right job satisfaction, all that stuff within those particular jobs or their careers at an organization. Sorry. So we'll want to have multiple sources and we'll want to have multiple tactics to try to do accurate job analysis so that we can come up with, and James hit the nail on the head, accurate tasks that we need to accomplish in those jobs, accurate requirements of what the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other attributes are for those particular jobs, accurate outcomes like the responsibilities, the key performance indicators of those particular jobs. All those things will help us to shape the parameters of what we define as good performance. So we know that we want good job performance. And to understand that, we've gone out and done job analysis. We've done workflow analysis. We've got multiple sources from and multiple tactics, gathered all this information. We know our tasks, duties, and responsibilities. All that stuff is built up. And now we've known and we've defined what is good. And we're going to break that down into 2 sections. And James already talked about one, and he's going to talk about another here shortly. The first was task performance. We have overall job performance, and now we have task performance. The things that people do, their behaviors, right? We want to define what is good, what you do, and what is a behavior that you have that interacts with all of our equipment and our assets and our resources to create our finished products or our finished goods, our products and services that we offer as an organization. So the things that we do that work directly with our resources to create those end outcomes, the finished good of a product or service, that is our task performance. And those can be broken down into 3 sections. We can do routine tasks, we have adaptive tasks, and we have creative tasks. A lot of jobs are built up, especially entry-level jobs, of routine tasks, things that you do over and over and over again. Had plenty of jobs like that. I've got one right now. How many videos do I make for this class? A ton. So one of my routine tasks is that I'm on the computer constantly, and I'm making videos and I'm interacting with a camera here, which is completely awkward, but I've learned how to do it over and over again, so it's not as awkward anymore because it's routine. It's something I do over and over again. And then there's the adaptive tasks, things that would occur that are not completely unusual, but semi-unusual, that they come up every once in a while. And I need to adapt to those situations. So a good example would be I have office times, and if you call me with a problem, I have to do some sort of adaptive task to try to help to be a resource for you to solve that problem. And that would be something that's not done every single day, all day long. It's not completely routine. It's thrown at you every once in a while. And you have to be able to adapt to circumstances to solve those problems. If I was on a production line, 98% maybe of the quality assurance that we have is good. But what happens when something comes to the line that is unexpected? How do you handle that situation, and how do you adapt to that particular situation? That would be an adaptive task. Then we have creative tasks, things where people go out and they try to provide some sort of novel solutions to problems. Not every job's going to require this, but every job may want it. Well, some jobs may not want you to. Some jobs may want you to just keep your mouth shut, do your job. But there are plenty of other organizations out there that may want every once in a while for you to come up with some novel task or some creative task. We would do this in our operations environment a lot through our bonus programs. In our bonus program, we would incentivize team performance. In that incentive, we would try to offer opportunities to lower or incentivize the lowering of our cost per unit produced. And one of our largest cost per units that was under our control had to do with issues with quality, shipbacks that would occur with our customers because the finished good wasn't what it was supposed to be. So we put in place this team bonus, and we were asking our employees to come up with solutions to be able to lower our cost per unit produced. And we had one employee who was out in production at a production meeting. We were talking about quality issues and how it impacted our bonus and our opportunities to earn extra for our employees and for our organization. And the employee raised his hand and said, hey, the lights above our production line are like X amount of feet in the air. It's really hard to see the quality that's passing in front of us with really dim lighting. Let's lower the lighting a little bit so that we can see a little bit better. And then we can clean the lighting a little bit better as well so that we can have constant light shining on our products so that we can see it every day. That organization had been operating for, almost, maybe 50 years up to that point. And 50 years later, somebody said, well, let's lower the lights. That was a creative solution. It seems simple, but man, we walk by them every day. And that was a creative task provided by that employee to create value. And it wasn't just like tens of thousands of dollars in value. It was hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in value at one facility alone. That one employee added through a creative task. So when we're looking at what it takes to be successful, we're looking at task performance, and we're looking at routine tasks, we're looking at adaptive tasks, and we're looking at creative tasks. Now we're going to get into another section of job performance. So we've got job performance, we've got task performance and all the things associated with it. Now we're going to talk about the second component of job performance.
Then you get into the extra stuff, what you call like the frosting on top of the cake, and that's called citizenship behavior. Mm-hmm. There is OCBI and OCBO. Organizational citizenship behavior at an individual level means I help you when I don't need to. Mm-hmm. You help me when you don't need to. And we generally help the other individuals because they're friends, or even if they're not, because they're colleagues and it's just a matter of professionalism. That's extra. It's not in my job. It's not in your job to go do these things. But the organization looks and goes, that's awesome. We like it when people do that. It's called citizenship behavior. OCBO, organizational, means I do stuff for my company. Here's a dumb example. We're walking in to the campus in Ellensburg, and you see garbage on the ground, you pick it up and throw it away. It's not in our job description, but it's better for the university if that's the kind of culture we create.
Yeah.
So
Here's how twisted my mind works. You ready? When I do something like that, I wonder if somebody planted it
as a test.
as a test.
This is a test.
And that when I do it, there's going to be some party.
Right.
I'm an idiot.
No,
Why am I such an idiot?
it's actually a perfect segue into, can you select for good performance, task performance? Yeah. Can you select for OCB? Yeah. Chick-fil-A did this for quite a while.
No kidding.
They'd have interviews and they'd plant stuff, just like you're saying, on the way in, just see if the person's going to pick it up or not.
Golly, my wiring is justified.
Yes, it is. Just all,
I'm being tested all
right.
the time.
Right. It was
How
like
did I do?
It was like, well, you do things that you don't need to do because they're a good thing to do.
For sure. We would do this in interviews as well, where especially with manager interviews, we'd sit and have people watch how they treated people as they walked by.
Yep. Yeah.
Did you treat the front desk people like you treated the operations people? Did you treat them the same as the executives?
Yep.
If not, probably not going to be a fit in our organization.
Right. And we did it too when we were hiring our like kind of front-facing staff analysts. So we'd bring people in, and I would ask someone on the team, hey, strike up a conversation with them on their way in. And we're just going to see if it's no, I have an interview, I have to go.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, I care about a human. Like, how are you? Yeah. So you can test for some of that. So there's 3: task performance, the citizenship, and the last one is it's either called deviance, but some people call it counterproductive work behaviors. And this is a component of performance. It's just at a negative. Just the things that you don't. I'm not going to talk to this person over there because I'm upset at them, right? It's my job to work with them, and we'd say it's one thing. It's one thing not to meet expectations or below, but counterproductive means just that. You're actively going against the job requirements.
Right. And you can do that to the organization, and you can do that to individuals.
Absolutely.
And you can do it really severely and less severely.
Yeah,
What would be an
absolutely.
example of an organizational severe counterproductive behavior?
Theft
Got it.
happens all the time, and like Nordstrom, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes down, and then there's cynicism. A big area of study in org behavior in the last couple of years has been knowledge hiding. Because so after, it's all over right now. There's actually I don't want to brag, but I did just publish a paper in the Journal of Knowledge Management.
No kidding.
No kidding. And the outcome was knowledge hiding and ostracism. But ostracism, because they were all COVID. It was a big tech firm in India.
Yeah.
And they were, COVID sent everybody home. And it was like, well, now you have information. Who do you share it with? Well, you share it with your friends, and I don't like that person. So you'd hide knowledge, or you'd share it, you'd ostracize people,
Right.
you'd start certain little chats, and you'd leave certain people off and stuff like
Right.
that. Yeah, it's fascinating.
And in the U.S., that could potentially cause disparate impact.
Oh, huge. Yeah. Who's in my group, right?
For sure. Well, HR people. There you go. Had to throw that in there, make myself sound smart. I want to take a quick break here to make sure that you caught all of that. James hit a gold mine under the term of citizenship behavior. Talked about 2 positive types of citizenship behavior and 1 negative type of citizenship behavior. The first positive one was interpersonal citizenship behavior. The second was organizational citizenship behavior. We want to try to increase these through hiring the right people and encouraging the right behaviors in our organization. And then we had what he called deviant behaviors as well. And the book calls those deviant behaviors counterproductive behaviors. And you can be counterproductive to individuals, and you can be counterproductive to an organization, and you can do it in a minor way, and you can do it in a major way. And when we look at organizational counterproductive behaviors, we look at what would be serious, which is property deviance. So things like theft, James mentioned. And then we have minor ones that are organizational deviant or counterproductive behavior. Things like not talking positively or talking negatively in a public context about your organization. And then when it comes to interpersonal deviant or counterproductive behavior, we had major and we had minor. Major would be literal physical or emotional, some sort of abuse that you're applying or harassment to another individual in the organization. And then we have minor individual counterproductive behavior, things like gossip or preventing people from having knowledge as well. I want to take a little aside here and talk a little bit more about citizenship behavior and how important it is that we pay attention to it. All too often when we look at job performance, we only look at task performance. And certainly you should, and we need to. It's the reason why those jobs exist. Those tasks need to be performed within the workflow to create the desired outcomes and finished goods that we need. That is what we need from good task performance. But we also need good citizenship behavior, not just in the positive, but we also need to prevent the negative from occurring, the counterproductive behaviors. Quick example, I had an employee who worked for me who was an incredible, I'm not talking just kind of, but an incredible task performer. She was phenomenal, like blew everybody out of the water who had ever done that job at that organization previously. Incredibly accurate, incredibly proficient in her tasks. But her citizenship behavior was not through the roof. It was actually through the floor. There were instances that those of us who worked next to this person in the office noticed, and when we noticed them, we would go address them. And continuously, the behavior wouldn't change. I would put that person on a coaching plan. Some behaviors would change a little bit over time and then sink again. And it wasn't until we accumulated all those issues in their performance review and showed that person that they were rated low by other employees in the organization in that particular field, which had to do with her interpersonal relationships, that we really awoke a desire to change in that person. And we took somebody who was a low performer, and I'm not going to say they were through the roof performing on interpersonal relationships. It just wasn't how they were wired, but they were a good performer. They took out a lot of that counterproductive behavior because they really wanted to be a good person overall to others. And there was a lot of gossip and a lot of smack talking about people, things like that. So I want to emphasize that was incredibly important. The reason is because we as a team were losing a lot of trust of those around us because of one person's counterproductive behavior. We were also potentially triggering people to not want to work at our organization. The people on my team, the interactions that were occurring between that person and others was potentially making other people on my team dissatisfied. And so as a manager, you need to make sure that you're addressing those issues because that could have caused turnover on my team of valuable employees as well. So counterproductive behavior is vital to address. We do not want it to exist, whether minor or major. And we need to make sure that we are setting our people up for success. And we'll talk a lot more about that when we talk about job satisfaction and other things. But I wanted to throw that note in there that counterproductive behavior is, even if it's minor, is something that you need to try to deal with and deal with in a positive way.
So given the chapter 2 on job performance, I do want to throw this out. This is generally where I start with if I'm working with.
Right, stop real quick. We want to increase task performance.
Yep.
We want to increase organizational citizenship.
Yep, but it's tough. You can't fire people for not doing citizenship. It's not part of their job.
So we want to try to encourage.
Build a culture that encourages that.
Yeah. That incentivizes that behavior by whatever. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we are setting the stage to where the deviance behavior is occurring as little as possible.
Right. Okay. And the stuff that's hidden, you want to create a culture where that's just not what we do here.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
So I was going to riff a little bit on the job performance thing. A lot of the times where I'll start is if we want performance improvement or there's a performance breakdown. So we'll come in and I will ask people to tell me what is the outcome of your job. Mm-hmm. And most of the time they give me a list of behaviors. Which is sort of a problem. So here would be a great example. What's my job? Our job is to share information with students. It's to grade papers, grade assignments. Those are all behaviors. Our actual job is to educate. It's the student knows more and can do things when they're done that they couldn't when they got in. And there's behaviors that lead to that. So you ask people their job, most of the time they give you behaviors. Mm-hmm. I try to pin them down on the outcomes, which is like, why is this job here?
Yeah.
A lot of times they don't know. And then even if they do, I'll ask a manager and the manager will have a different answer. So that's called role clarity versus role ambiguity. People don't often they don't really know what's expected of them.
Right.
So
Or why their job exists.
why their job exists, and even like manager level. There was a book by a Central grad named James Mattis, who's a Secretary of Defense, and he wrote about this. He's a military guy. He wrote this idea of commander's intent. That is, do you know the intention of your commander when you go out? Like, what is the objective? If you're just like, I'm the guy that carries water. Well, no, the objective is to move from point A to point B. You're not just the guy that carries water.
Right.
So that is clear as managers can make the role. That's a big fat win. We get that from goal setting theory, Locke and Latham back in the 60s and 70s. So it's a fun exercise. I tell managers, go ask people, like, describe to me your job. And then I'll describe to you what I think your job is, and let's see where there's alignment.
Right.
And frankly, where there's
Usually
misalignment.
Usually do it through job analysis, right?
Yeah.
And that sense, it also provide like sense of purpose. Like I don't just know my task. We used to deal with
Right.
that with like work in process positions in the office.
100%.
It's this position that is between, a raw material and a finished good, and I'm just processing things in the system.
And just looks and
And
feels useless.
like it just, whatever. And then when we had great work in process people, performance in our organization through the roof in as far as accuracy of data, timeliness of data,
Yep.
and how we utilize that to make decisions. When we had bad work in process people or people that weren't engaged and didn't know why they were doing what they were doing, performance and it seemed like it was this position that nobody paid attention to,
Right.
that nobody gave credit to, and then nobody explained to those people, here's why your job.
Here's how the value you provide. Yeah.
And when we did, and when we rewarded that value, the performance of the organization went
Yeah.
to the roof from a production decision making standpoint. So
Yeah.
yeah,
There's a job characteristics model. So back in 1971, Hackman and Oldham kind of laid this out, and this is in the textbook as well in later chapters. And they talk about a thing called task identity. And that is, you get to do the whole identifiable piece of work. Almost nobody gets to do that.
No.
Right?
and you might not want it.
Right.
Internal controls.
And
like,
you may not want it. But if you can't do it, then it's the manager's job to almost be a substitute for that, to say,
Got it.
here's how what you do fits into everything, right? It kind of gives them that over level. This is why my job, not I exist. This is why my job exists.
For sure.
So anyway, role clarity as much as possible. People just need to understand what's expected of them.
All right, so we have job performance overall. We've got task performance, organizational, what was the term?
Citizenship.
Organizational citizenship. We had the deviant behavior that we're trying to limit. In the midst of all that, we're trying to create task clarity.
Yep.
And make sure that people know why they're doing what they're doing to set them up for success.
Yeah.
One of the things, one of my favorite management coaches has talked about it as like our jobs as leaders in an organization it's like a play. You're setting the stage for people to play, to do well. And if you set the stage poorly, and you don't explain like here's the role that you're playing and here's the stage in which you're working within, most likely the play's not going to go off well. Your job is to set the stage for success.
Yeah, and I'm sure this will come up later, but you also talk a lot about with every single employee all the time, you're managing them up or you're managing them out.
For sure.
There is no static. It's always dynamic. Yeah, I like that.
For sure. All right.
Cool.
Let's move on to chapter 3. Peace.